this morning. On our next segment, we want to introduce a guest, a businessman here in Artesia, Aldo Hernandez. Good morning, Aldo.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, grab that microphone there and get that a little closer to you. Appreciate you coming in. I know we're going to talk about Red Point Resources today. That's one of your interests, but you also feed people, don't you?
I do. I started a food truck. Artesia was missing some barbecue, so I figured now's better than never.
Well, yeah, it has been missing some barbecue, and you parked your trailer not too far from one of the old barbecue places, didn't you?
Yeah, hopefully we're paying it due respect, but we are parked at the old Circle K location, that empty lot there. We got permission to park there, so we're there every Friday starting 11 until we're sold out.
Okay, well, that's good. And what's your food truck called? It's
Rebel Daughters Barbecue.
Rebel Daughters?
Yeah. I have
Where'd that name come from?
I have two young daughters and kind of an homage to them.
Good. Well, let's talk about Red Point Resources. That's the other business that we wanted to talk about today, and I don't know anything about it, so I'm just going to ask some basic questions. What is Red Point Resources? What do you do?
Sure. We've been in business for about 9 years now, serving southeast New Mexico. We do Carlsbad, Artesia, Roswell, obviously, but we're based here out of Artesia now. We started in Carlsbad. We moved here, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago, something like that. We're a local construction company. We technically are classified as remodelers. That's the bulk of our work. We do a little bit of new construction, and but most of our work is residential remodeling. That's what we do.
Okay. That's probably an interesting area because there's a lot of people that have smaller projects, don't know who to call, don't know where to go. They don't qualify, or it's not a big enough project for one of the bigger, like the crews that have been doing the work across the street over here in this building. So I bet there's some things that people need to watch out for or be aware of when they're talking to somebody about coming in and doing some work in their home.
Yes, sir. And that was my main reason. So we do get calls pretty frequently. I want to say, I don't know, once a month, once every couple of months. Typically, the little old lady kind of crowd. Hey, I hired a guy, he came over, he gave me an estimate, and we were happy with it, so we went ahead and paid him half up front, and he did a little bit of work, and we never saw him again. That's about the normal sob story we get.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot we can do at that point other than to give them a bid to finish the work or start from scratch or whatever the case may be. So we kind of want to just come on here and just give some people
So are there some keywords or some warning signs or some things that as you're having this conversation with somebody, that if you hear this or this question is asked, you need to your red flags need to go up and you need to maybe think about it?
Sure. I think it's more a case of guidelines that on the customer, because anybody that comes into the home can tell them whatever they want. They're going to make up whatever stories they can. But I think more my focus with talking with you is going to be more of guidelines for the customer of what to watch out for as far as things they ask for, things like that.
Okay. So like you have like a top 5
something
that are
like
more common,
So for the sake of this conversation, we're going to break it down. We're just going to keep it to remodeling, no new construction. And under remodeling, we're going to break it down into 2 categories, well, 3 technically. So we're going to say something, first category would be under $2,500. So small jobs, very small. And then $2,500 and let's say to $50,000 and then $50,000 and up.
Okay.
That's kind of the base range that we work in. We work in that middle range to higher end range. So let's start off with if you're doing anything larger than $2,500, you really want somebody that's licensed, insured, has references. And the best way to go about that is ask friends and family, hey, have you ever hired somebody to do any kind of work? That's really honestly the best way to do it. If you start cold calling people out of phone books or off the internet, it can be hit and miss.
Sure.
So that'd be my first piece of advice there. Once you do find somebody, and let's say it's not from somebody that you know and it's not a good reference that you got it from, definitely ask for references and always check up on those references. Don't just ask for them. Always go ahead and check up on them. That'd be your best thing to do. When it comes to hiring somebody, you you want an estimate that's very detailed. So you want something that's broken down by square foot. Let's say we're doing a kitchen remodel. So we don't want an estimate that's just written down and says, hey, I'm going to do it for $30,000.
Right.
You want some details. You want to know what he's paying for, what he's including in that cost. So typically most of our invoices, unless it's something very random, we do almost everything by the square foot, linear foot, cubic yard. I mean, there's measurements for these things and pricing that goes along with that. That also allows you to compare. So if you decide to get more than one estimate, you can compare apples to apples. You don't just have one that's $30,000 and then you have one that's detailed with the breakdown.
Right.
So definitely.
What type of countertops? What type of flooring? I mean, do you want it that specific, or should it be that specific?
No. When it comes down to the fine details, those are figured out usually verbally between the customer, but you want a budget. So that leads us to the next thing. Whenever you're getting a quote from somebody or you enter into an agreement with someone, typically we don't allow our customers to purchase materials for two reasons. One, we have to depend on them to deliver the materials on time. We have to depend on them to go pick them up and bring them, make sure they're paid for. There's just a whole thing there. And then on top of that, we do mark up our materials. You need to understand that construction is a business. A lot of people get offended when we tell them that we mark up our materials, and they say, well, I can go buy the 2x4s at the building supply and I don't have to pay that markup. Mm-hmm. Well, there's more than that to it. One, it's a business, so we have to make a profit. Two, part of that profit is what pays for a warranty. So any good contractor is going to offer you some type of warranty. And part of that markup and profit margins, all that goes into our warranty and making sure that everything gets done correctly, is done well, and that if we do ever have to come back for some reason, that we can cover that cost. So ours is fully covered. If we purchase the materials and we install something, we would come back and replace it or repair at our cost, including any materials that were involved.
Because those were materials
if it was our fault.
Group picked out.
Yep.
Now on the estimate side of things,
yes, sir.
Somebody gives you an estimate. I think you said $30,000 for whatever.
Yeah.
Does that need to be, or can the customer demand that be a hard number? In other words, I don't want it to be $30,000 estimate, and then, oh, by the way, we had another $5,000 in additional things that we had to do to do what we said we were going to do, so it's $35,000, not $30,000. How does that usually work out, or what should a consumer look for in that area?
So that would be a conversation with your individual contractor, but typically what happens is what you're describing is called a change order.
Okay.
So anything in excess of the original invoice at that point would become a change order. And anybody who tries to add, any contractor that tries to add things to the original invoice, it gets extremely confusing very fast, and the numbers start changing, and you never want to do that. So we anytime a customer requests something different or something comes up on a job, we find mold behind a wall, anything like that, it's considered a change order, and it's a separate invoices that's paid at the end of the job or when the work is done. Just depends on the job.
Okay.
But yes, so that is a common thing. You don't want it to happen often. You don't want that to happen. You don't want to say, I have $30,000 to remodel. Here's your $30,000, but also we have this other $5,000 that we didn't work, and the customer just doesn't have an extra $5,000. So it's definitely always a conversation that should be had before. Say, hey, these are the issues and that's what a good contractor does. These are the issues I might foresee. There might be mold behind this wall. That bathtub might need to be replaced. Your drain line might need to be snaked. And
if we have to do those would be in addition to what we've talked about here.
Yeah. Here's what I would budget, and that's typically what I would if it's bigger than a $5,000 job. Typically, I have that conversation and say, here's what I foresee might happen. Here's what I expect to budget if these things come up. And of course, it's not always that way. A customer might change their mind about something in the middle of the job, which is very common. You can't foresee that, so there's just no way.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to happen. You're going to have, well, I didn't realize that would look that way when that came out of there. Can we do this?
Yes.
And that would be a change order situation then, I guess. But that conversation would have to happen. That may not be known before the project starts, but if you want to make that kind of a change. I wonder how many customers think that that's just such a small thing that you can just slide that in there. Yeah. Just do that. You probably hear that from time to time.
We do, and we've had customers get pretty upset. Say they ask us to, let's say, hey, can you put a new light switch there? Mm-hmm. Sure, a light switch is only $1.50 or something, but you know that costs us time and money. That's still a trip to the hardware store to pick up a light switch. That's still, and they get, offended because we have to charge
Or maybe there's no wiring there, or there's not a box there.
Yeah.
Or, if you want to do that, then we got to put a three-way over here. We got to do this and that. So it's not, sometimes it's not as simple as maybe the customer perceives. Depending on the situation.
Even when it is, it's still, you're asking somebody who you're paying to do a service to do additional work, and that costs them money. Anything that we do costs us money as a business owner in any kind of service industry. It costs you extra money if you're doing extra work.
Yeah.
So you got to keep that in mind. Now, if they're charging you $300 to change out one light switch, that's an issue.
That's an issue. Yeah.
That becomes an issue. So that brings me to my next point, which would be anybody who promises you the world is probably not going to do a good job for you.
Right.
So if you hire somebody to do a $10,000 remodel, a bathroom remodel, and they say, no, we're going to handle the plumbing, we're going to handle electrical, no, we know how to do HVAC, I wouldn't recommend that. That's not a good choice because nobody knows everything. So we have qualified subcontractors that we use. We have plumbers, we have HVAC people, we have electricians that we hire from small to big. I mean, there are some stipulations on that. If it's a really small job and we just have to change out, like I said, a light switch, that's something I can handle or we can handle internally. We're not going to hire somebody at $300 an hour or $100 an hour to come switch out a light switch. Just doesn't make sense.
Right.
But if we're rewiring the whole bathroom, we're going to hire a qualified electrician that's going to pull permit and do a good job and make sure everything's safe. You can't expect that from somebody who comes in and says, no, we'll handle everything. We're personally going to do the plumbing, the electrical, the HVAC. They just they don't always have the knowledge. Sometimes they're just guessing at stuff. They just want to make that money.
Yeah.
So be wary of that.
Well, let me ask you this. You, when it comes to like a plumbing project or something like that, and you're doing a project at somebody's home, is it an issue when the customer likes to kind of watch what's going on and keep an eye on what the crews are doing, or I guess it depends on the customer?
Yeah. So we've had it both ways. Honestly, if you have a good contractor and you have good trust in them and there's no real issues there, I would let them do their work. Kind of stay out of it. We've had plenty of jobs where they do let us do our work, then they'll come in the evening after we leave and they'll make a huge long list of stuff and come at us the next morning.
Yeah.
Just almost ruin our day. Like, all right, we saw you didn't do this, we need you to do this. And we're trying to explain to them, okay, well, there's a process, there's steps. So
we're not done yet.
We're not done yet. We're going to get to that. And we've had some pretty bad ones that do that. But don't hound your contractor. If they're keeping on the schedule and they're doing a good job, and from what you see, they're doing a good job, they're actually doing the work, and just let the process go. If they start delaying it a couple of days, a couple of weeks, and it's just taking forever, then you need to really, even after a couple of days, you need to start asking questions like, hey, where are we at? What's going on? Why isn't this done? But if they're on track and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, give them a little space. You can always ask questions. Definitely ask questions, but don't hound your contractor if he's trying to do the work and he's got guys there every day and that kind of thing.
Now, you said something a minute ago. You said pull permits. Depending on the level of the project, at what point does a homeowner that is either doing a project themselves or hiring somebody to come in and do a project, at what point do you have to start getting permit people involved to do some of these projects?
Well, if you're hiring a licensed contractor, and I guess we're going to kind of break this into two categories, unlicensed and licensed. So if you're hiring a licensed contractor, the city and the state, almost for everything we do, we should be pulling permits. Of course, there's gray areas there. If we're just painting a room for you, we're not going to pull a permit for that. If we're remodeling your whole house, yes, of course. So there's just certain things, and of course there's certain fees we don't want to pass on. If we're painting 3 rooms in your house and it's a, I'm just spitballing here, but let's say it's a $1,500, $2,000 job. We don't want to charge you $100 for a permit. The permits that we pull as general contractors, they go based on price, how much you charge for the job. So it's like $1,000 to $2,000, $2,000, $3,000. I don't remember the specifics, but it's something like that.
Okay.
So, and we have to charge you for that. We can't just eat that money.
Right.
So we don't want to charge you that if we don't have to. So, and Don, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Don's the building inspector here in town. But they would ask us to go ahead and pull for every job we do, I think is kind of the guideline, but if I remember correctly. But
yeah. Well, we don't want to get you in trouble with that.
No, that's fine. But yeah, there's.
Because did I read somewhere like if you're going to swap out a toilet, you have to pull a permit?
Yeah, pretty much.
Really?
So and that's all government bureaucracy, and the state needs to make money on those kind of things. It is what it is.
What do they need to make money on that for? Yeah, they got other things they can make money.
Yeah.
That's interesting because as you know, a lot of people do their own projects, and there's hardware stores and big box stores that cater to the weekend fixer-upper person that's going to go in and what's the joke, when you check out, thanks, do you need anything else? And it's like, I don't know yet. How late are you open today?
I'll be
back. But so at what extent do you really need to start getting permit people involved when you're doing some of these just basic home improvement projects?
Well, and that brings me to my next point, which is so it's really never a good idea to start something and then want to involve somebody. Anybody who you involve and who takes on the job at that point, you don't want them in the first place.
Okay.
So before you even start, if you tell a contractor or a handyman and say, well, I'm going to do the framing and I just need you to do the drywall, and it cuts out a lot of money for us, and it basically the scales don't balance at that point. Basically, we're breaking even because we're just doing one little thing instead of the whole thing.
Gotcha.
And it also brings into play our warranty. If you're doing the framing and you forget to nail a 2x4 or whatever, and it eventually starts coming loose, and then the drywall starts coming loose, and you tell us, hey, you need to come warranty that, and I'm like, I didn't do the framing, you did.
Right.
So we personally won't do that. We won't take on any jobs where the customer says, no, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I just need you to do this other half.
Right.
We just don't do it. It just becomes an issue, and then it becomes an issue with scheduling and, like, when are they going to be done so we can start, and it just becomes a whole thing.
Yeah.
So we really don't do that. And
so if you want somebody to do the project, here's the project,
Yep.
and then
And based on that, then you want to talk about our permits being pulled. If it's at the scale where your contractor is hiring subcontractors, plumbers, electricians, HVAC, you should
most
be pulling
likely
a
there's going to
permit.
be permits. Yeah.
So again, small painting jobs, things like that, no, you're not going to pull a permit. Small bathroom remodel, you probably want to pull a permit for that.
Interesting. Now, you also had said a lot of times the phone calls you get are from the people that I gave them half the money and now they're gone and I need to get this thing finished. How generally should that payment agreement be? What should be established as far as a payment understanding is concerned?
Yeah, and thanks for bringing me to the next one, which is the big one is money.
Yeah.
At that point, if you're talking about money, you've already accepted an estimate and you feel comfortable with the person doing the work. We personally don't typically, so I can't say all the time, but typically we don't accept any money up front. Our payment schedule, which should be a pretty common payment schedule, something in this is ours, but it should be something in this ballpark.
Okay.
Our payment schedule is when we start a job, and again, it depends. We're going to break this down into small, medium, and large jobs.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about medium right now.
All right.
So if it's a medium-sized job, we start the job, let's say about 2 weeks in to 3 weeks in, we're about halfway done. Our first payment we request is about 45% of job completion.
Okay.
And those match up to the numbers. So if we're at 45% done with the job, we request a 45% payment. When we're 90% done, we request another 45%. Once we've signed off on permits, once the customer's completely happy, everything's done, every nail's nailed in, everything's done, we request the final 10%.
Okay.
That's how we work.
Okay.
But something along those guidelines, if you're hiring somebody in the $2,500 and up range, should be in those guidelines. We highly recommend you don't hire somebody who's asking you for money up front, because there's no leverage there.
Right.
I mean, they haven't done any work. They haven't.
But I need the money because I've got to go buy the stuff to get started on this project that I'm going to do for you. That's usually the reasoning for that, I would assume, whether it's true or not, but that's the reasoning for it.
Here's what I'm going to say to that is, if they're doing a $10,000 job and they don't have some money in the bank enough to get started, which $2,000, $1,000 to $2,000.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand we've been in dire straits before, but I've made it work. There's always things you can do to make it work. But anyways, if they don't have a little bit of money in the bank to get them started, and then they're probably not.
And they're counting on the customer for the down payment just to get the project started. That's one of those. Maybe I should not go this route and maybe talk to somebody else type red flags, if you will.
Yep. So as far as money concerns, now let's talk about small work. Let's talk about handyman's type work, stuff like that. Let's say a handyman would be falling into maybe cleaning up your yard, maybe replacing a toilet, painting a room, painting a bathroom, anything like that. Anything under $2,000, $2,500, things like that. So we go by the same rule of thumb. So if they're doing anything under $2,000, what's happening is it's going to be a small enough job that they're probably done within 1 to 2 days. Within 1 day, typically. Maybe 3 days at the most. If they can't, and it's mostly all labor. If handyman work is typically almost all labor, there's not a whole lot of materials involved. So if they can't hold out a day or two without a payment to finish the job and spend $200, $300, $500 in materials, again, maybe you need to look at somebody else to hire. So that's the way we look at it. Now, there are stipulations. So let's say we're doing a $10,000 kitchen remodel, but the only thing that you hired us to do is order and pay for your cabinets and countertops that you picked out. Cabinet and countertops are pretty expensive. And we're talking $8,000 probably. Just ballparking on a 10 by 10 kitchen. So the 90% of that is materials. Now, if you're asking a contractor to pay out $8,000 out of pocket, that's a little bit different. Then we would be asking for a payment up front. Say, hey, we need to at least cover part of the materials we're about to purchase. So, I mean, little things like that. But that's few and far between. Typically, if we're doing a kitchen remodel, we're not just replacing cabinets and countertops. There's a lot more to that.
There's electrical and plumbing and appliances and flooring and all that.
And all that is done before cabinets and countertops. So by the time we get our first payment, we're ready to order all that, and we have that payment to go ahead and start ordering stuff. So,
well, the company is Red Point Resources, and what are the kind of jobs what do you really love to do? We really like doing flips. That's our favorite thing. They're kind of long term. They're larger projects between 25 and 100 grand. That's what we like. We do a lot of flips for customers. So even if it's just like a rental flip and you just want to paint the whole inside, kind of just freshen up the whole thing, new flooring, new paint, new doors. So that's kind of like our bread and butter. That's what we like to do. That's what you like to do. Well, that's great. Well, how do people get a hold of you, Aldo, if they want to? If they don't want to wait till Friday and see if they get your barbecue?
So we have a Facebook page, but we also have an office downtown.
Okay.
And we're on Google and all that stuff, so you can look up our phone numbers and
look up Red Point Resources.
Yes, sir.
And it'll be easy to find there.
Yep.
Well, good. We'll have to have you back. I mean, I've gone a little long here, but that's okay. We'll have to have you back here in a few weeks. And
there's some more stuff I'd like to go over. Contracts and things like that.
Love to do it.
We'd like to help as many people as we can. We're not just trying to get business. We want to actually help people hire somebody that's going to do a good job and not take their money.
Yeah, and be happy with it when it's done.
Yep.
Not say, wow, I wish we'd have done this. Or, I mean, there's always going to be some of that. I mean, there's always going to be, well, I wish we'd have. But, that comes from a major project where you're doing a total remodel. You can't always think of everything that happens in that. But for the most part, you want to be happy with the contract and you want to be happy with the project when it's done and feel that you got your money's worth. So.
And any good contractor worth his salt is, he'll have a touch of, she will have a touch of design in them. And just from past experience, because I literally couldn't do any kind of design work at all, and decorating, but because of past experiences and what you've seen and what colors and things that people have done in the past, you'll have some experience say, yeah, we've done this and it looks great when we're done.
Yeah.
So, and that's what you're looking for.
Good deal. Aldo Hernandez, Red Point Resources, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
We'll have you back.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, we're going to take a break, get the Zoom room opened up, get Aaron in.